Every now and then I talk about being lost. I don't know if you have ever been lost or been lost lately. I used to get lost a lot when I was a kid, not so much anymore. I think it's interesting. I can be out in the middle of nowhere now in the wilderness, walking, enjoying mountains and trails and all this stuff, be on these journeys and just, not really feel lost. But I can be in the middle of Home Depot. Totally different story. 100% lost. Not that I don't know where I am, it's just that I don't know where anything else is. Like my location in reference to everything else. If you ever, I don't know if you've been at, it's the only thing that's worse, in my opinion, and don't throw anything, ladies, but it's Hobby Lobby. Not only do I feel like I'm in the wrong universe, but I'm pretty sure that if you ask somebody, where do they keep the fill in the blank at Hobby Lobby, they would just look at you funny because they don't keep anything anywhere in Hobby Lobby. They keep everything everywhere. Have you noticed this? It's like, I think I've already seen this. It was a few aisles this way, and it's the same thing, and I feel like I'm in this like weird time warp where I'm just, I walked through this, and there was a portal, and I came out in a different part of the store, and it's just pretty crazy, but that's off point. Home Depot is, I don't know what the deal is there. If it's lumber, I know where that is. I can smell my way to the lumber, right? They keep it in the same spot, and it sort of makes sense to me. I just don't know in that pile of 2x4s where mine is. Mine's the straight one. And it's the one usually on the bottom in the far back, right? And you got to go through all of them before you get there. Everything else in the store, however, I don't know where it is. They've got to have, I don't know if this is true or not, but they've got to have 1 million products at Home Depot. And they stack them really, really high. They don't like it when you climb up the shelves to get the stuff on the top, but they've got all this stuff. And I don't know if you've ever been to Home Depot and we're looking for that one thing. I went looking for that one thing, and I didn't know what it was called because they got 1 million things, and I don't know all their names. And so I can explain it. It's got a fork on this end and a screw on the other end. You screw it, and you can hang stuff on it, like, hang a tool on it, and it's probably called a tool hanger. But it might not be, and I don't want to say the wrong thing. And so I'm looking around, and I'm not sure where this would be. Everything seems like tool stuff at Home Depot, so it's like, where's the tool hanger aisle? They don't have one. And so eventually, I start to feel like a man out in the middle of the desert, lost, and if someone doesn't come help me soon, I'm going to die of thirst, right? I'm just going to be crying here in this aisle. And finally, I find someone with a Home Depot, help me, vest. I almost said bib. I don't think it's a bib. They don't probably call it bib. They have a Home Depot vest, their name maybe it's their name that's written in Sharpie on it, and I say, hey, I'm looking for, and I try to explain it to them, and they're like, oh yeah, those are over on aisle whatever. They're about a third of the way down the aisle, a little bit above eye level, and you can't miss it. And I'm like, oh no, wait a second. We just met. You have no idea what I can miss. I can stand, we have a pantry at my home. It's got 50, 60 items in it. I can walk in there, and I know we have peanut butter in there. It's somewhere in there. My wife has told me it's in there. And I can stand in there and look and look and look and miss it all day long. I need you to show me where this is. And I don't know, they seem kind of, so busy. I'm too busy to show you where the tool hangers are. But they walk me over there, and in the midst of all of this, they show, here are the tool hangers. And there's some really, really big ones, and there's some really, really small ones, and there's nothing in between. And I say, is this all you have? Because I see these shelves that go up into the clouds, and there's lots of boxes up there. Do you think maybe there might be? And they look at me like, they want to kill me. Like, are you serious? You can't just, why don't you just use one of these? And I think it's just frustrating for everybody, right? It's just frustrating for everybody, which is why I'm so grateful that now you can just shop online. Right? You can probably, put tool hanger into the search box, and in the first 300 pages, you're going to find it, right? You will find it. Is this all you got? Is this all there is, right? I don't know if you've ever been there when you're looking for that specific thing and you're just not finding it or whatever. Have you ever, is this all there is? Maybe I think that's a question that we tend all to ask at different times in our life. Maybe you've asked it for different reasons. Maybe you've, sometimes we can do this in relationships. We get in our relationships and we're just kind of doing the thing and we just get into our pattern of life and we're just going about our life. And after a while, maybe due to some frustrations of our own, we had these ideas of what would be and we are living in what is, and we maybe stop and say, is this all there is? We go to work and, put our blood, sweat, and tears into our job. We work hard, and we work hard for years and years and years. And maybe we had some idea of what was going to happen, what the outcome would be. There was some sort of thing that I was hoping for. When we first start, we just want to do good. We want to change the world. We want to do this. We want to just make a difference. Whatever. And then after all these years of doing the grind, we're just like, is this all there is? Is this it? Sometimes maybe we get to that time when we got to sit down and pay bills, and we're balancing the checkbook and kind of look at each other and say, is this all there is? There's a lot of maybe times in our life when we ask that question, is this all there is? It's really an expectations issue. I recognize that. It feels, to me, this is like whenever I read Ecclesiastes, when Solomon writes in Ecclesiastes, he's like just talking about how just miserable. The whole world is just like miserable. And this is the beginning of the book, and it's a very, it's his approach. I don't think this is actually where Solomon was, but like spiritually, I think it was just his opening of this book when he's talking about from a flesh perspective. I mean, the sun goes up, the sun goes down, we go about our day, and tomorrow we'll do it again, and it just becomes this repetitive droning on of life, and it's like, is this all there is? And when we ask that question, I think it exposes an expectation. We expected more. We expected something different to happen. We expected maybe at some point some kind of breakthrough, something that would lead to us maybe being more hopeful, maybe being more joyful, maybe just something. We just want to feel a certain way or think a certain way or to become something else, maybe. And then we just get to that point where we ask, is there anything else? Is this it? And when we ask that question, it's oftentimes because we in that moment feel lost. Lost in life, lost in a store, lost in our career, lost in our marriage, just lost. And maybe you've asked that question of your spiritual life, like you just want to go face to face with Jesus and just be like, okay, I'm as far into this as I am. I've been doing this Christian thing for however long, maybe your whole life, maybe it's just been years, maybe it's just been a year. I don't know, just whatever. And you had these hopes and dreams, and here's what life was supposed to look like, and you just want to have a face to face with Jesus and just say, is there more? I kind of thought there'd be more. And I think It's a fair question. So just in case you've ever asked that question, I don't want you feeling bad about it because I think it's a fair question, and it's a question that I ask. So just so you know, I think it's a question maybe we ought to be asking. And maybe, I kind of wonder why it took me so long to ask that question in my life sometimes. And we just... I don't know if you ever think about this. I think about it all the time probably because I'm a preacher and I'm here all the time. I do this all the time, and I kind of think church is weird. So if you've ever thought church is weird, you agree. You'd be like, yeah, Pastor and I are on the same page. Church is weird. It is weird. We do some weird stuff. Where else in your life do you ever go to gather with a bunch of other people and sing songs? Do you do this on a regular basis anywhere else? If you work at preschool, maybe. I remember at the high school, when I was going to high school, we'd gather every now and then for a school, assembly, and we'd sing the school song. And that was kind of weird. We were all like, yeah, this is weird. We're singing together. A song that, it's great, but it's not like our favorite song, but we do this. But we just don't do this. Do you and your coworkers, do you ever, gather for a little sing-along in the break room? No, you don't. You don't do that because it would be weird. That's why. But we do this every week. We gather together, we do weird things, and we get together, we listen to some guy go on and on about weird stuff, and then we go home and feel good about having gone to church, right? And then after long enough, we kind of get to a point where like, is this all there is? This will be accelerated, I believe, if we read the Bible. When we open up the scriptures, because there's this amazing story in the scriptures, especially and not especially amazing, but especially when we read in the Gospels, when we read of Jesus and his experience with his disciples and all that they went through in their time with him. This was, what an amazing set of circumstances, and Jesus is doing all of these things. And of course, we always have to have that caveat. It was a Jewish culture. It was a different than our culture. And Jesus was doing these things, and it was super normal in their culture, and so we have to figure out how our culture does this, and so we have all these stories of Jesus going to his disciples, leading his disciples, going through all this stuff, and then this is what they experienced, and this is what Jesus said, and this is how they did it, and here we are, 200 centuries later, and this is how we do it. Once a week, we gather together and we do these things, and then we go home and feel good about it. And at some point we go, is that it? Now, I want you to know, I'm not trying to be down on what we do together. But I am saying, if you ever thought, is there anything more? I want you to know you're normal. That's a great question, I think. An important question for us to come to. So, over the next few weeks, you probably caught on to this already. I'm starting a new series today. And over the next few weeks, we're going to do a series. We're going to be taking a look, kind of stepping back and maybe looking at some big picture stuff. We're going to be looking at the book of Matthew, and if you've been paying attention, that's what we've been doing for months. But we're gonna go big picture, maybe more big picture than well, definitely more big picture than we have yet. About what this thing is. What is this invitation to follow Jesus? What is this all about? And are we doing this? How is this supposed to look? How is this supposed to work in our life? And what are we doing in the first place? This is all so odd. This is just this thing that Jesus invites us to do just doesn't seem to fit into this life of ours in a very normal way. At least this human life of ours, in this culture of ours and all this stuff. It's just weird. It just seems to be out of step and not in harmony. And I want you to know that is also by design. There's nothing weird about that. Jesus was very clear. This isn't gonna go like everything else. And for us, I don't know about you, when you're reading in the scriptures from the very beginning, like Jesus starts out in his ministry. And this is actually in your notes. It's in Matthew chapter 4, starting verse 18. Jesus walks up. He's teaching people. He's starting his work as a rabbi, and he comes across these fishermen. These men who are at work. They're not, when you say fishermen, it sounds like it was their day off in our culture, right? They were just out, getting some fresh air, absorbing some sunshine, tying some flies, having a good time. No. These guys were at work. This was their career. They went out, caught fish, brought them to the market, sold them so people could eat. This is what they did every day, or probably more likely every night. They would go out, they would catch all these fish, they would sell them, and here they are at the end of their shift, cleaning their nets, fixing their nets, okay? And in Matthew chapter 4, starting verse 18, while walking by the Sea of Galilee, he, that is Jesus, saw two brothers, Simon, who's called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men, which is an interesting thing to say to a couple of fishermen, right? Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. And verse 20, this is the weird verse. Immediately they left their nets and followed him. Now, maybe you've been able to, maybe somebody's explained this, how in this culture, if a rabbi comes and asks you to follow them, it is a big deal. It's very, and it's true. It was a very big deal, and we kind of don't get this culturally because this isn't how we do stuff. It isn't how we do school. But this is how they did it. Every Jew, when they were born, they would go to school as children, and they would learn to read by reading the Torah. And the goal of their school, especially through those first few years, was to read the Torah and memorize. The Torah is, by the way, first 5 books of the Old Testament, starting with Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. That's the Torah, otherwise known as the books of the law. And all the law that God gave to Moses, and there's a lot of history in there as well. They would read that, and the goal was to memorize as much as possible. And the students who were very good at that, who seemed to be, who were accelerating in that type of program, would then, when it was all done, be invited to continue in their studies, because there was the law, and then there were the prophets and the writings, all of the rest of the Old Testament, and they would begin to study that in depth. If they weren't so good at it, they didn't show a whole lot of promise, they would go home. They could now read. They had an understanding of the law, all that stuff. They would go home, and they would usually learn their father's trade. They would be prepared for that, to be a worker. They would learn how to do construction. It was like very, very practical education. They would learn how to do things, how to farm, how to ranch, how to build, how to do whatever needed to be done to survive, to live, to raise a family, to do all those things. And but the others would be invited to go on. And then if they did really well, you could just keep going and going. And if you were a very bright student, you would have an increasing, you would have like rabbis who were more and more prestigious, depending on how adept you were at getting all of this stuff, would then invite you to their school. And it would be, just a small school. You would work with them. They would teach you. You would learn. And maybe you would then have jobs like being a scribe. And that would be somebody who wrote down maybe the teachings of this rabbi, a lot like what Matthew was doing with Jesus. Matthew went from being a tax collector. It's interesting that, Jesus's invitation of Peter and Andrew and these guys was very clever, right? Follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. When he called Matthew, he wasn't like, I'll make you tax collectors of men, because you already are that, Matthew. And it's like, how do you make this cute? He was just like, follow me. Follow me. Took a couple of times, if you're paying attention. He calls him, Matthew follows him for, a day, goes out to see what he's teaching, and then he's back at the tax collector's booth, and Jesus is like, hey, Matthew, follow me. Follow me. And finally, he just leaves it and follows Jesus. And so Matthew's doing this. And so here's some things that we can infer from all this, that Peter, Simon, and Andrew, these brothers. And then in just a second, it goes on in verse 21. And going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, John, his brother, in the boat with Zebedee, their father, mending their nets, and he called them. Immediately they left their boat and their father and followed him. The very fact that these guys were in their father's boat meant that they were not invited by any other rabbis. It was okay, you guys go learn your trade. And Jesus comes along and invites them. So for them, it was like, oh, well, this is a big deal. Here's a rabbi that's like, it's sort of like, if you play in sports, maybe you're real good, and you're hoping that at one of your games a scout from a college is going to come and watch your game. And maybe if you're good enough, they'll invite you to become a part of their program, right? Where you can learn and grow and be coached and maybe, and if among that group you are really, really good, that you'll be picked up by a professional team and get to play on this other level, right? We understand that. This is what they were doing in terms of, this is how rabbi school worked. It was the same basic idea. Well, so, it's okay, when we know that, it's a little less weird. But we're also like, okay, well, we don't do that in our culture. So how's this supposed to work in our culture? Like, how do we do what they do or what they did? And it's just kind of, it's a different thing. And we can kind of get stuck here. It's I think in the difference, in the tension between what we see in the New Testament and what we experience here so many years later in a different culture and all these things. It's easy to kind of just get stuck and say, is this all there is? And feel a little lost. And if you feel that way, first of all, I want you to know it's okay. And if you're like, well, I didn't feel that way until you mentioned it. Okay, well, sorry. Hang on for just a second, and because we're going to talk about this. If you feel any of this tension, and ask this question that's so important to ask. I mean, because Jesus, in one sense, Matthew does this. I love the fact that he actually had to ask Matthew once. Isn't that great? I got to tell you, I'm so glad he had to ask Matthew multiple times, right? Because I'm just guessing that most of us in this room relate a lot more to Matthew than they do to Peter and Andrew. Like that whole, okay, well, after about, a few times of Jesus coming and knocking on my door and saying, would you follow me already? Then I started to. And I'm so glad he did. Because they all knew that he wasn't inviting them on a weekend camping trip. He wasn't inviting them to be like, hey, you guys want to let's do a pilgrimage to Jerusalem and, just go see the sights and we'll do a tour. And I'll explain some of the things that happened in history because I was there. And that's not what he was inviting them on. It wasn't this journey, and it was a weird journey. If you can do this, there's Matthew is actually pretty precise, and so is Luke, about the places that they went and kind of the order they did things in. And you can take a map of ancient Israel and literally plot all of the places that they say and number them and then do a dot to dot. And what you're going to get, it's going to spell out the word blessing. No, it's not. If it did, you'd be like, that is so weird, right? But that's not what it does. It's like this crazy, it looks like a messed up spider web. It's just like this, somebody scribbled all over this map. Well, why did they do that? Because Jesus wasn't taking them on a let's go from point A to point B, adventure, this trip where we're going to see the sights and, taste the foods and do all this stuff. Jesus was just living life with them and going to all of these different places as God led. And it was just it was really this weird, convoluted journey that they were all on, and they didn't understand it. And I'm here to tell you that I am pretty sure, Ivory Soap Purity sure, right? 99% sure that most of the time the felt lost. Not like they didn't know where they were, but they didn't know what was going on. They're asking questions all the time about it, like, what did you mean by this? And could you please, they would always wait, let Jesus would tell parables and all this stuff, and then when the crowds were all gone, they'd be like, it was great having you all, thanks for coming, close the door. Jesus, what in the world did that mean? And they would wait until everybody's gone before they ask. And he would explain to them some things, and why are we doing this? And why are we frustrated about this? And who are we? Where are we supposed to sit in relationship to you? I mean, are we your right-hand people? Do we get to sit at the king's table in your kingdom and be to your right and to your left and all this? And Jesus is like, you don't understand any of this, do you? And they're like, I mean, if this conversation happened, do you understand any of the things I'm telling you? And they were honest, they'd all be like, no, we don't. We don't. Well, you will. He didn't invite them on a pilgrimage. He invited them into this life that they don't even know this. I mean, well, they do. I think they know this. They didn't get to see how it changed the world. Not in their lifetimes. We do. We get to see history. We read all this stuff, and we're like, wow, these men who followed Jesus changed the world. It made everything different. We would not be coming into this place every day and singing our songs and sitting in our rows and listening to me if it weren't for them. None of this. I mean, it would all just make so much less sense than it does already, right? Because of these guys. And yet, here we are, 200 centuries later, having church, reading the Gospels, marveling at how different our experience is than theirs, and secretly, most of the time, in our hearts, asking, is this all there is? Are we doing this right? Over the course of the next few weeks, I am going to be talking about some ideas, some discipleship concepts that actually are, I think, pretty revolutionary, pretty radical, but I don't think Jesus would think so. They're actually like trying to understand and contextualize what he did and how this works in our life, and answering that question, is this all there is? Because I think the answer to that question is no, this is not all there is. There's more. There's so much more. But we don't always know how to access it. We don't always know how to move from here to there. And we have a system, a way of doing church. We're kind of, it's a distinctly American way of doing church. It's very, very Western. Jesus and his disciples were very, very not Western. Even the very categories that they thought about life in are very, very Eastern. And so here we are, this, we would say, philosophically, America is very Greco-Roman, philosophically. I mean, we're Eastern, we're Roman, we like to conquer things and build stuff and, play football and slam dunk. That's kind of what we do in the West. And Jesus and his disciples were very Jewish, very Eastern, and it's different. So we're trying to squeeze these things together, and it does kind of make sense that it doesn't always equate exactly. It doesn't always look the same, and so we can get disoriented by that. And so for today, here's my encouragement to you. If you feel this way, if you ever feel lost in church, if you struggle with this question, is there all this is? I want to encourage you that number one, and you fit in perfectly with Jesus' disciples, if that's true, because I'm pretty sure they felt lost all the time. So my encouragement to you is this: trust your rabbi. I am not your rabbi. I'm just the preacher. My goal in my life and in my work is to point you to your rabbi, not to me, to your rabbi. Trust your rabbi. He's not so upset when you feel lost if you're following him, because he knows he's not lost. He knows exactly what he's doing. So if you feel lost, I want you to know that's not a problem. If, this is the most important part, if you're following Jesus. If you're following Jesus, then you are, in fact, never lost. Because Jesus is never lost. Even if you don't know where Jesus is leading you at the moment, which is not a problem. Because, and you've heard me say this before, we don't live by explanations, we live by promises. So, if you're feeling lost, trust your rabbi. He's not lost. Number 2, imitate your rabbi. Imitate your rabbi. The purpose of following Jesus is to learn his pattern of life. So that doesn't mean we always understand what we're doing. It doesn't mean we always understand where we're going. But imitate your rabbi. Imitate his pattern of life. Following Jesus is all about learning his pattern of life. Jesus' pattern isn't always linear. Anybody here particularly like to do mountaineering, like to climb mountains, like to stand at the top of a mountain, where you get these great views? Anybody? Nobody? Okay, I'm asking, this is a literal question. Is anybody with me? You like to get up there and to see the sight, right? And if you've done it before, you know that you don't start at the bottom of a mountain and then take like a laser and carve a straight line to the top. That is never the way you are going to get to the top of a mountain, right? There are some times where you might be able to follow a ridge line there, but most of the time not. most of the time you are going to be spending time gaining elevation by the use of a switchback. And they may seem monotonous, they may seem brutal, but man, they will save your life. Because if without switchbacks, the only other alternative is a heart attack, right? You will die without the switchbacks. Which means that there are moments when you're climbing a mountain that you are walking in the opposite direction of your goal. But we instinctively know that's not a problem. Because the direction that you go, I mean, the way you have to go to get to your goal is never a straight line. And following Jesus, man, if we were each to kind of plot our journey through this life and our journey with Jesus, I don't think any of us would characterize it by a straight line. Yes, I was born and I have walked a straight line toward Jesus in my life. No, we'd be like, there are so many weird things that have happened. I've been like feeling like out left field doing this. I don't even know what I was doing in this place. And it was just all this stuff happened. It was just like, it was crazy. Most of it was super confusing. And we would not say that we actively and instinctively plotted our way to where we are today. We have this thing we do. And by the way, if you're a teenager, people ask you this all the time. So what are you going to do when you grow up? And I don't know why we still ask that question. Do we expect anyone to actually know the answer to that question when they're a teenager? What did you think? You just turn around and look at them and say, well, when you were my age, what did you think you'd be doing when you grew up? Is it what you're doing now? Why are you even asking me this question? I don't know. Nobody knows the answer to this question. Because we don't move. Jesus does not lead us in straight lines. There are switchbacks, there are curves, there are all the way. I mean, sometimes we turn the corner and there is this canyon that we didn't ever even see coming. And we might, oftentimes, we're tempted to ask, Jesus, are you sure you want to go here? Right? Did you mean to lead me into this, canyon? Into this valley of this shadow of death? Right? And we go through those things and we don't understand it. But listen, you're not lost if you're following Jesus. And you just need to imitate your rabbi. Just imitate your rabbi. Jesus' pattern isn't linear, it's cyclical. It's often way more cyclical than it is linear. And what I mean, I think I've explained this a little bit before, but let me just say it again. It's like hygiene. At some point in your life, you learned that you need to wash your body and put on deodorant. And you did. And everybody got happier. I don't know, you might not remember it. Just ask your parents. They'll remember. Parents can't forget those things. And you mastered it, in fact. You mastered that. And then you said, well, I've mastered this skill. I'm so glad I never have to do it again. No, you didn't. Not if there's someone sitting next to you today. Right? You learned that, and then it became cyclical. We do this. We repeat it all the time. And this is very similar to what walking with Jesus looks like. It's not such a linear thing going from point A to point B, but it's a pattern of living with Jesus that we continue to do. But here's the most important thing, and here's the biggest, I believe, one of the biggest disconnects for the American Christian that's striving to follow Jesus in this world and feels the tension between what God is doing in the scriptures and what he's doing in my life. And that is this. Jesus' pattern of life, Jesus' purpose in your life cannot be mastered in a chair. It can't be mastered in a chair. It doesn't happen by sitting in a row. There is more. But not all of it can be done sitting in a chair. Jesus didn't invite his disciples to come on in and find a comfy place to sit. Not even once. I think, at least it's not recorded. They probably did sit down at some point. You had people sitting down. But very rarely was it ever in rows. And so this is some of the stuff that we're going to get into. Trust your rabbi. Imitate your rabbi. And then ask yourself, and this is my challenge for you this week. I'm bringing up a lot of tension, and I'm not going to resolve it today. I'm going to resolve it over the next 6 or 7 weeks, okay? We're just going to be digging into this for a while. But I do want to ask, I want to challenge you to ask yourself this. If there is more, if there is more to all this, if there is more to following Jesus, what would you hope it is? Maybe we all in this room, we probably all have like an immediate thing that we would say. And I would encourage you, maybe take your phone app, phone out, and if you have a notes app, write it down. Write down the question and then write down like what's your immediate thought, or put it in your notebook, or write it in your Bible, whatever. But keep thinking about it. Ponder on this. Pray about this. Think about like if there were more to this, what would I hope it was? I mean, never mind the question, would you be disappointed to find out if there was more to this? Or would you be disappointed to find out there wasn't? Most of the people I talk to would be very disappointed to find out there wasn't more. This was it. And I think that a lot of people have left the church because they just kind of have come to the conclusion that this is it. This is all there is. And they're just like, well, then this isn't it. It's not all there is. There is more. I'm really curious, actually. I would love to know. If you want to write it down and send it to me in an email or a text message or call me on the phone, I would love to hear what you think, how you would answer this question, what you hope it is. That's more. And over the course of the next few weeks, we're going to take a big picture look at the book of Matthew and see what insights that we can gain into the pattern and the purpose and the process and product of discipleship, of following Jesus. What are all of these things? What is it that we ought to be experiencing and how? Know for today, though, that if you're a follower of Christ, you're never lost. Because Jesus is never lost. You may not understand what he's doing in your life right now, but that's okay. Jesus does. Your rabbi knows what's going on. He knows what he's doing, even if you don't in this moment. I owe a huge portion, actually, of the kind of the kernel of this entire sermon series to a fella who I've come to think of as a friend named David Murrow. He doesn't know who in the world I am, so if you know him, don't call him up and say, hey, your buddy was telling me about you. He doesn't know me. But I've read, he's written several books. One of the books he wrote was called Why Men Hate Church, which is a kind of a shocking title. I bet the title alone sold tons of books. But he wrote this book, Why Men Hate Church. But then he also wrote another book called The Map, and it was okay. It was a good book. It's kind of split into two. He's got half the book is a fiction, and then half of the book is this idea that he has about men's ministry. But I think it's probably page 47 is the idea that I'm taking. And we're going to look at this. And he talks about he talks about the three journeys. Next week, we're going to be talking about the three journeys of Jesus. And when I read these like 6 pages of his book, it blew my mind. And it rescued me from a place in my life where I was asking, is this all there is? And it opened my eyes to what Jesus actually wanted to do in my life, and how he wanted to change my character. And I started talking to people about that and realizing that every single person that I spoke with was feeling the same thing and struggling with the same stuff. And so I'm hoping in the course of the next few weeks that we are going to talk about some stuff that are going to maybe blow your mind, but certainly encourage your spirit and maybe supercharge your discipleship relationship with Jesus when you realize that he wants to take you to a whole new level in your life, a place you've never been before, but you've always